All right. Welcome back to the 12 Days of DFIRmas podcast. It's a short series that ArcPoint's putting on where we are doing a live podcast every day for 12 days. We kicked it off on the 7th and we are on day 3. So now I'm joined with Jessica Hyde. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got into digital forensics?
Hi, I'm Jessica Hyde, founder and owner of Hexordia. We're a digital forensics service training reseller company. If it's digital forensics, we probably do it. How did I get started? All right, so that's a weird. You want the short answer, or like the full story there?
I want the full story. I'm here. I got my blanket, I got my cup of coffee. Let's go.
So I got out of the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps after September 11th, and I got out. I had was finishing up an engineering degree, electrical engineering degree, and I had a clearance and I was looking for a role. And I still really wanted to do something very mission centric. So I took a position on a reverse engineering team at TDAC, which is the Terrorist Explosive Device Analytical Center. And the role of my job was to reverse engineer improvised explosive devices or IEDs. So this was my first like counterterrorism job getting out of the Marine Corps. And IEDs, very well-known fact, and there's lots of pictures that they are connected to phones, commonly either from a trigger end or a receiver end. And so I started my digital forensics career by extracting data from blown up mobile devices and trying to extract data from that. So that's how I got my start and my first role in digital forensics, not the typical route.
Not atypical, but that's fine. So, for the holiday season, we all have like these little holiday things going on. I could not wear a ugly holiday sweater. It would have been too much. I would have been broke. They're expensive.
Not every day, not every day, true.
Yeah, but I asked all the guests to, and I want you to explain yours because I think it's hilarious.
Sure. So I wanted to tie the holidays into forensics, and it's Hanukkah right now. So mine says, imagine if your cell phone was at 10%, but it lasted 8 days. Now you understand Hanukkah. And for anyone who has ever had a phone that they picked up that was AFU after first unlock and they needed to keep it in that state and did not have a battery pack with them, this is the miracle you were wishing for.
So true. I also would be creeped out if my battery lasted 8 days at 10%. I'd be
And you would probably
so
call it a
disturbed.
miracle and celebrate it every year for thousands of years.
Maybe, or I would just trash it and get a new one. I wouldn't trust it.
It sounds like it's a good phone then, not a bad phone. You trash that? No.
Yeah, that's true. I should keep it. It'll last forever, literally. Um, so as people enter in, just because I want to tie this into Extordia and like some of the work that you're doing, you come across a lot of individuals who are new, taking your courses and stuff like that. So as they're entering in the field of digital forensics, what skills and knowledge areas do you think that people should focus on the most?
That's a great question because when people are coming into the field, there is so much to do in digital forensics. I was actually having a conversation this morning with one of my mentees who I want to look at this and this and this. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, digital forensics is in itself is so broad and then there are so many niche areas. So advice piece one is to find something to delve into. That could be I want to delve into AWS and cloud, or I want to delve into malware analysis, or I want to delve into iOS analysis, or etc. Because I want to dig into Linux memory analysis. There's so many different areas that my first thought is to find a niche for you to study in and most importantly, produce a demonstrable. And there, you asked which area, and my answer is pick one because there's so many. I'd say there's so many specific skills. Like I would say, if you're going into incident response, Yara rules are a must. If you're going into mobile forensics, right, you're going to need to learn Python. You're going to need to understand protobufs and level DB and SQLite and plist. You're going to need to know data structures. If you need to know data structures for everything though. If you're going into if you find that your niche area is cloud, you're going to want to understand everything about AWS or Azure, not just attack it from a digital forensics perspective, but go take the AWS or Azure, Google Cloud Platform courses and learn that. So the what skill is going to depend on the niche area, but I would say three differentiators that I think you need for your resume are one of the three. I would go Python, Yara, or cloud skills, because those are really what's going to help you depending on what type of role you're looking at. Um, in addition to learning traditional digital forensics. But the key to getting a digital forensics role and to setting yourself apart is to have that demonstrable. That could be GitHub, right? Putting some code out there, either your own or contributing to a project like the LEAP project, contributing to Autopsy, contributing to Volatility, MemProcFS, any of the existing projects, contributing code, or your own project. That's one. It could be a blog. Blogs are great. They're a great way for you to share your learnings. And if you're like, oh, but I'm new, what do I have? There is so much to explore
Yeah.
that hasn't been done, right? Like if you want to jump down my rabbit hole, if you want to come into mobile or IoT, guess what? There are scores of IoT devices that no one's done research on, and there's millions of mobile apps that no one's looked at, right? So you can dig into one of those apps and write about something. But even if you're like, I'm not comfortable doing brand new research, just writing about your learnings and your digital forensics journey will help. You could write that blog about how you solved questions on a CTF, hashtag do CTFs. I've got one coming up. I'm actually building one. Hexordia is building one right now for the Magnet Virtual Summit. That's going to be March
Oh,
6th.
cool.
So we're building one.
It'll
So
be a good
doing
one.
those things will help raise your skills, but basically you need that demonstrable. So the goal in getting the skills is to create a demonstrable, because that demonstrable, be it a code, a blog, a white paper, a presentation that you're giving at conferences, whatever it is that you're putting out to share and contribute to the community, it shows your involvement in the community. It will get you connected to people because you can network and share, and it's something a recruiter can check.
I just have to laugh. Kevin just put, did someone say CTS? I was summoned. And I see
That's
Jared made a
actually
comment. Hey,
how we
Jared.
get Kevin into the space. And what's neat is Kevin's actually going to be doing the verification and validation round on this CTF. So that means he can't actually compete. So for everyone who's like, Kevin Pagano wins all the CTFs, no point in me trying. Kevin actually is doing our verification and validation round this go, which is a win-win for the CTF, but also makes it a little more
It
accessible to the
levels the
rest of the
playing
world.
field, is what you're
Levels,
saying.
yes, yes, yes.
Aha.
So bringing Kevin in might be twofold. He's a genius, and
This is gonna be the
we're going
hardest
to level
CTF
the.
ever. No.
Well, if anybody's interested, Kevin and I are actually going to be doing a virtual live workshop where we actually walk through last year's CTF problems to help people figure out and understand how to think and go through and solve problems. So that might be fun. I don't know what date that's airing, but it's sometime in February as part of the Magnet Virtual Summit.
I think that will be extremely helpful because people who have never done a capture the flag event, it sounds overwhelming, right?
Oh,
And I'm sure it does feel overwhelming as you're going through it and you don't really know where to start.
so that's something that I'd love to just, if you're okay with it, I want to alleviate that fear.
Yes,
Now,
go ahead.
I don't care if you've been doing forensics for 2 months or 20 years. CTFs are not about competing for that prize. So take that first, second, and third prize out of it. Think about what you're going to learn. You can focus on just a couple of problems. You can take all the problems and work them out later. You can even, after the CTF, a lot of people blog how they solve them. And by the way, there's no one right way to solve it. Lots of things have multiple ways to get to them. And you can read their blogs and rework through those problems. You can do that with all the past CTFs, the ones that were put out by Magnet, as well as the ones that have been put out by Celebrite, the Huntress CTFs. There's all these great CTFs out there. You can either download images from the Computer Forensics Reference Data set. CFREDs on NIST, or you can go to About DFIR has a lot of them listed.
Okay.
So go out there and try an old CTF, but seriously, it's a lot of fun. So join us for the CTF. We put all kinds of Easter eggs and funny questions. And my favorite part, like we prep all the data so that we can have questions that of things we want to highlight, etc., built in. But my favorite part is for every question, we write a title for the question, and it's usually a pun, and it's usually a hint towards how to solve the question. So if you like puns, do the CTF. It's
And
March
we know you have good puns.
It's all about the puns. So join us March 6th for the CTF. But seriously, if you've never done one before, check out that video where we're going to walk through how to do them. And we make sure that there's questions. There's questions that range from like 5 points to 75 points. So no matter where you are, we will either challenge you if you're super experienced, or we have questions that are going to give you that sense of accomplishment and know what you know and figure out areas where you need to spend more time studying if you are a little less experienced. So this
So
is
I
fun.
want to get down a little bit of a rabbit hole for people who haven't
Mhm.
done a CTF, right? So you just mentioned the different points. So you can kind of walk through exactly what people can expect as they're going through it. Like
I love that.
everything is
Okay.
this.
So this is kind of how a CTF works. You join the CTF, you log into a CTF board, and it's going to have most likely a couple of different categories, which will usually be operating systems. So are you going to be answering Android questions or iOS questions or Windows or whatever we've cooked up for you? And then within each one, there's going to be a couple of boxes, and they're going to have these quirky, punny titles that aren't going to make any sense till you read the question. And with each one, it's going to tell you the point value. You open it up, and you're going to see the title of the question, which will be a pun. And then you'll see the question, and then you'll have a place to enter the flag. And then you're just going to go search through your data, use all your skills, your tools. You can use any tools you want. These aren't tool challenges, these are forensics challenges. And then you're going to input your answer. And either you're going to get it right or you're going to get it wrong. Occasionally, we have some questions that unlock other questions, but most of them at the lower levels are open just from the beginning.
Okay. Awesome.
And then you get points and there's a scoreboard and it races and it's so much fun.
And that is called anxiety for me.
Well, so you don't look at that. So here's the deal. If you don't like to look at the scoreboard, just don't. Just answer the questions. Just see it as hey, I have this challenge to figure out how many of these little puzzles that are forensics related that I can solve. And then you can just blog about the ones you solved. And what's cool is we're going to leave it up for more than just the 3 hours. That's the CTF. The CTF is 3 hours. So and I know a lot of workplaces actually block that 3 hours out for their entire team because it's such a great learning
Oh,
event. And everybody just does the CTF for that 3 hours. How cool is that? It's like
that
your
is
whole
actually really
team or
cool.
your whole lab can all kind of be chilling and doing it together. And
Team
that's
building
not
event. Yeah.
team building event. Now you're competing individually, don't share answers, etc.
It's
But
fine. It's fine. You can talk smack to the person
you can
next to you.
talk
It's
smack to the
totally
person next to you.
team
And
building is team building.
And here's the other thing. Nobody has to know who you are. If you're not in the top 3 winners, your name's never gonna be public. You can make up any name you want. So like me, I usually use my legit handle, which is bintahex, B1N2H3X. And I have definitely seen on CTFs that I'm running, lots of people logged in as not bintahex and not like exclamation bintahex and things like that, or bintahex too. But anyway, you can make fun of somebody else's handle. One of the things I love when Kevin Pagano's allowed to participate, as most years, he usually picks a different handle each time, and there I am watching all the answers coming in, and I'm doing a lot of work during that live 3 hours, stopping cheating, unfortunately, but also checking and making sure that there wasn't an alternative answer that we didn't find in our verification and validation round. So we go through every single wrong answer manually to make sure it isn't actually an alternative right
Oh,
answer.
wow. That is a lot of
Um,
work.
yeah, so luckily, great team of interns that I have from the Champlain Digital Forensics Association who are helping with the CTF and getting some cool experience at Hexordia. So the five those 5 folks plus me, we're very busy the entire time everybody else is playing. But one of the fun things that we're usually trying to do is figure out which username Kevin is. And I don't know if Kevin knew that we do that the whole time, but we're like taking bets on the back end on who Kevin is. So that's
Do
fun.
you have one, username that you think is the best one that he has used so far?
Oh, I don't
Oh,
know. I'm actually
I
going to leave
stumped
that.
her.
Kevin, you did. You stumped me. Kevin, what's your favorite of your usernames you've ever used? You're gonna have to put that in.
Yeah, definitely gonna have to put that in. I wanna
There's
know.
been so many. Now, of course, my favorite usernames are when people use puns. So please feel free to find a good pun for your lab, for you, for what you do. There's great ones like DFIR Gecko, when like people just get fun and inventive with it, and it's great times.
We'll have to circle back when he responds. So, I want to go back to the research
Yeah.
aspect of it. So, we have emerging technologies and methodologies. Obviously, they're constantly coming out in our field. The devices that you are recommending for, let's just say, Internet of Things, right? How do people get a hold of those devices? Because not all those devices are cheap. So, do you have a recommendation of like where they can start? Obviously, if you own one of these devices, it's easy for you to test your own. But if you want to expand beyond that, what would you
Wow.
recommend?
So finding a way to actually procure devices is sometimes interesting. I mean, some of the interesting procurement things I have had is where something isn't available domestically. I'm in the US, and when something isn't domestically here and I have to work my network to try to get access to a device from overseas. For example, I've got some, and Sarah Hayes on my team definitely knows this. We definitely have some like counterfeit iOS devices that Sarah Edwards picked up for me in China. We have a bunch of devices from overseas. So that is Cesar Quezada picked up a Harmony phone for me while he was in Germany. There are people who, as they travel, I sometimes tag friends, but from a financial resources perspective, if something, well, first off, there are lots of cheap IoT devices. There are lots of IoT devices under $50, and I bought. Exordia actually does have an IoT class that we do privately, and I actually just procured a whole bunch of devices for that course during the Black Friday sales that happened.
Oh, that's
Um,
a good one. Yeah,
yeah, I totally did. I mean, so this is our IoT manual. We've got a big IoT class that we
just
do,
a few things in
and
there.
just
It's
a
a
little
big
bit,
manual.
just a little bit. That's just the lab manual. Uh, so, but we like to mix up what devices we're using for that course, and I just bought a whole bunch of like Flipper Zeros, which we use to listen to the devices on the network, and Woozers, but a lot of, I don't even know if I pronounced that right. A lot of things are under $50. So my big tip would be to look at those. It might not be economical to go test on a smart fridge. Now, if you want to do something that's more expensive like that, it is a great idea to reach out to any university around you that has a digital forensics team and lab,
Oh, yeah.
because universities like Marshall University has some IoT devices, Champlain College has some IoT devices, and I would bet that their lead professors, not to call out Josh Brunty over at Marshall, Dr. Ali Hadi at Champlain, and there are plenty of other universities that have digital forensics labs. I'm sure if you said, hey, I'd like to help with some research, they would be lovely to engage in that conversation with you, to see if maybe, I don't know if they're going to limit it to only students, but maybe you could get some access. Maybe you could propose some stuff. I'm not sure, but people are always looking for research partners. So again, not to say specifically somebody would say yes, but there may be opportunities. But there are a lot of low cost devices, and there's also a lot you can do in emulation. Never discount
Mm.
emulation for testing. I teach at George Mason University, I teach their mobile device forensics course, and I have students, and my students, as part of the class, many of them wind up doing brand new research in mobile device forensics. Some of them have access to devices that they can get full file system extractions from, such as devices that are rootable or devices that are jailbreakable. But not everybody has access to those devices, and not everybody has a device other than their personal device. And for many reasons, we don't use our personal devices for testing. Now, using your personal device for learning is very different than testing. If you're going to be sharing the data, do not use your personal device. If you're just learning, sure, there's nothing wrong with looking at your device. I advocate for it because you're going to get so much information about how much is kept on you, and you'll have robust big data sets. But if you're going to be sharing and using it as a project and putting it out in a blog, it's good to have test data. There's a really great testing document that's out from NIST OSAC. Myself, Josh Hickman, Connie Bell, um, Barbara Gutman, Jim Lyle, a bunch of us worked on that as part of the NIST OSAC. Great paper, testing guidelines. There's uh, for digital forensics. And Josh and I actually did a presentation, and it's online at MVS last year, about testing for digital forensics on mobile devices.
Okay.
But the point is that you can do it, but even if you don't have a device, you can test so much in emulation. So there, you actually, all you need is the Android SDK. So actually downloading the software development kit directly from Google for free will give you the ability to do Android emulation. And one of my prior students, Alyssa, if you look up Alyssa emulator on Medium, you'll get the blog post she wrote about how to extract the data from an emulator if you're using an emulator to do your data population and testing,
Yeah, we'll update this video afterwards,
with all kinds of links.
and with all the links, yeah, because I feel like every time I talk to you, I have, like, at least 30 links. So,
Resources, resources, resources.
if you need a resource, Jessica knows where to go. So, okay, so for emerging technologies and methodologies, what are we looking at?
What's emerging? So obviously, IoT is going to become more popular. We're going to get more cloud data. We're going to get more sensor data, so periphery data, edge nodes, and that's going to be a lot more of our sources. We're also going to have less data stored on device, more data stored on cloud. So that's going to give us more policy issues in terms of what is our authorities and how can we get data from providers that is cloud side stored instead of device side stored.
Okay. And that's what is your prediction for 2024 for privacy? Is it gonna be especially with cloud data?
You know, I'm gonna say there's a lot that's been going on and a lot of cases around different types of data and their acceptance in court. I mean, I've even written amicus brief recently around geolocation data. So there's a lot of court questions about validity of data, about the scientific method, et cetera. I'll start by saying if you need a reference about how digital forensics is a science, please go see the NIST Foundation paper on digital forensics. It defines how and why digital forensics is a science. And the reason I keep referencing these NIST documents and SWIG-DE documents is because when you're being challenged in court about is this a science? Is this
Mhm.
repeatable? We need to show and demonstrate how the scientific community has accepted us. That is why I'm a member of SWIG-DE, the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence, who's having their meeting in January. We write documents to help with standards. It's the reason that I participate in this OSAC. It's the reason that I'm going to the American Academy of Forensic Sciences in February. It's the reason I go to DFRWS. We need to partner with academia and the scientific community to create the documents that demonstrate the scientific principles. We also need you all to write and share based on your research that you're doing to prove the artifacts in your lab. If you are in a lab and I don't care if you're prosecution, defense, incident response, what part it is, if you have to research something new, please share it with the community. One of the cool things you can do is you can write it as a blog and you can submit that blog to DFIR review, where it will undergo peer review, even though it's blog created content as opposed to a white paper. Look, I've published white papers and they can take months to go through a
Mhm.
review. I had one that took 14 months of going through a review before it was posted. It's a long process. Blogs are great because we can get out the information now, and if you wait 14 months, it might be stale. The paper I'm referencing is foundational. It doesn't change. It's about the concept of why you should never say deleted, just recovered, because they're all different states of recovery, but we won't get into that. That's a whole other conversation.
There's not enough time right now.
But I guess my point is that policy will change, and what we need is documentation that shows science as the understanding um, underneath things. Caesar, I see Caesar Quezada saying yes, standing by to review even more blogs. Caesar Quezada is one of our really participant on the DFIR review committee. He does a lot of reviews for us. There's a lot of folks doing it. You can actually look at the list of reviewers online at dfir.pubpub.org, giving you more resources. I know, Amy.
I'm gonna have to start typing them down right now.
But really the crux of the matter is we need to put out more scientific literature if we want our science to be taken seriously by public policy. We need to be participants in creating documentation. So please, please, please share and have things go through peer review.
If you wanna be a reviewer, how do you apply?
On DFI, just email DFIR review at dfrws.org, or you can go on the DFIR review site and you'll see a link for that.
Oh, this is great. Kevin just said, "Guess I need to get back to research for more papers." Speaking of
Yeah,
which,
well, you know what? Kevin's been doing a lot of contributions to code to the LEAP project. So thank you for that, Kevin. But I'd like to say that we have to balance those things. Just because we define something in code, what happens in court is they go, "How do we know that that block box made it true?" I was actually listening to a Supreme Court, state level Supreme Court ruling this morning about something where I had submitted this amicus, and it wasn't the ruling, it was the just the presentation of a motion, but we're waiting on the ruling. But the point being that we need the documentation and the peer review process and the citations in order to get through court. Just having it in code, just having your tools do it is actually not enough. And I think that's something that we have to accept is we need this partnership between research, publication, academia, and practitioners. And that's really the intersection and crux that we're trying to help with DFIR review, but also that you can do through these academic publishing groups as well.
I was just gonna ask, what recent research in digital forensics has either inspired you or that you've recently done?
Ooh, okay. So the team at Hexordia has been working on a cool project where we're looking at live memory from iOS devices. We actually have a free community edition tool out there called Evanol, which is got a cute little icon. It's like a lizard with
I
a
love the
tail.
icon. I
It
think it's
makes me happy.
adorable.
So if you check that out, actually a brand new Evernote Community Edition is going to be coming out, I expect by the end of the year, maybe first week of next year, but it's in final testing and review right now. Um, but we're also researching a lot of access to devices and these same areas from a variety of APIs and from talking to the device in different states. And we're getting a lot of data back, regardless of if it's a supported version or not. And we're looking at both of these from both a perspective of when we have the password and we don't. So that's where we've been spending a lot of time and research right now. Additionally, working on getting out information about how to deal with data structures that we're seeing third party apps using more and more on mobile devices, as well as other things like Level DB and Protobus and PLIS and SQLite. PLIS and SQLite have been around a long time, Protobus as well, but dealing with them if you're not a developer, that becomes a little bit of a struggle. And Level DB. So we've been working on developing a lot of content in that area to share with the community.
I love the content that you put out because especially for someone who doesn't actively do casework anymore, feel comfortable taking your courses and being able to follow along. Like they're
Oh, thank
not
you.
intimidating at all. Because sometimes when you take courses, you can be really intimidated easily showing
Yeah,
up. So
our goal is to be accessible and hands-on heavy, if that makes sense. We wanna both give you a lot of practical exercise, have you walk away with tools, all open source tools that you can access and use in your lab, and learn concepts, not tools, right? So we want you to
right.
understand how to do things and how they work, but in a way that's accessible, even if it's something that's fresh and new to you.
Yeah, I think that's super important. So, in terms of staying updated in the community, how can people stay updated with you? And do you have anything, I guess, anything exciting going on, like coming up?
Sure. All right. Well, first off, you can file at Binta Hex, B1N2H3X, because I'm that much of a nerd that I wanted a handle that was stood for binary to hex, but was alphanumeric alternating. Like,
Of course.
'cause that's the nerd I am. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter at Jessica. I'm Jessica Hyde on LinkedIn, my real name. Um, Also follow Hexordia at Hexordia. We're on all the platforms. Coming up, we've got a couple of things. So this week we're launching our virtual live of our 1-day data structures course. This is meant for intermediate or advanced users. Doesn't have to be mobile because we actually dig into and teach SQLite, LevelDB, plist, and Protobuf, all open source tools. 1 day. We've done this live for departments. They've loved it. And so we're launching the virtual that actually starts. There's one running this Wednesday, but there's also one running in January. So super excited for that data structures course. I think people are really going to like it, down and dirty in the data, applicable to all kinds of devices.
Yeah, and I
And
just want to say I sat in on that class in person, and I loved it. I thought it was great.
you. Thank you. And then we're doing our full week Hexordia Mobile Forensic Analysis course, which we do virtual live and we do privately for a lot of organizations, police departments, agencies, etc. We're actually doing our first in-person public course,
Oh,
and that'll be in February at the Mississippi Cyber Center, which is really cool because it's in Gulfport, Mississippi, which is really warm, and it'll be at the end of February when it's really cold and snowy where I live. So I'm really looking forward to that, both from being able to do the live class in person with a variety of students from all over, as well as, so there's still seats available if anybody wants to come down and spend the week with me in Mississippi. It's going to be great fun. And then, like I mentioned, we've got this new release of Evanol 2.0 coming out. And what's really cool about this new release is I know that in the current version, we really don't parse anything for you. We just give you a huge data stream. And then on the analysis screen, we show you some things that may be important, but they may not make sense to you. So, this Evanol 2.0 in the community edition, guess what? It's going to have parsed results there for
oh,
you
good.
in a format that's very familiar to many of you. We worked with Alexis Brignoni and we'll be using the LEAP format for the exports. So there'll be an Evano LEAP or an eLEAP.
Very nice.
And so it'll be really familiar and accessible to everybody. So yeah, we've got a lot going on. It's really exciting.
I guess so. And how convenient that you chose a very warm place in February.
I am not a silly girl. We do not need to be going to Alaska in February.
Oh my gosh. I was freezing here. So I'm in Tampa and is 56 degrees this morning and I was like, I can't handle it. I can't
Um,
handle it.
I'm in upstate New York, close to the Canadian border, and where I live, 57 is celebration, and most people would be in shorts, flip flops, and a t-shirt. So
No.
that's our mornings in
No.
the
I
summer,
mean, I have
though.
a blanket. I'm actually cold.
I mean, I
And
have a
they're
little
talking about like,
blanket. I do have a small fireplace behind me, so that's how I'm keeping
that's
pace.
convenient. Yeah, they're trying to figure out if they want to turn the heat on or not. That's the dilemma here in Florida. So that's where we're at. No, I'll stay here. Maybe I'll meet you there. I don't know.
You're always welcome up.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's always a pleasure. And tomorrow we actually have Dean Hoffman from SL Innovation Corporation, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what to expect from acquisition side. So a little bit different from a digital forensic perspective. So I'm excited about that. So thank you so much,
Thank
and
you. This was great. Happy holidays to everyone.
happy holidays. Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.